This is the Velvet Door, where beyond the door, we discuss all things that are worthy. Hurry up before it's too late.
Including my thread that I did on the Black Panther movie breakdown. My theory, my view. So, you guys can go ahead and read through the top. And if y'all have some links y'all want to put to the top, that would be really cool to put in. So I'm gonna start with first saying hello to everybody. I did a thread a few months ago where I said that the Black Panther movie was a theory or a story of America. And I had broke down about Killmonger. Killmonger being Michael B. Jordan is actually an American. And I said that he is a representation of the American Indian. So if you look at my thread, let me see, scroll over, where it says the theory. The Black Panther movie is a story of America. And let's read between the lines. And the first one that you see is the guy, what's this guy name? The guy who plays the character, he's from the top of the mountains. What's his name, y'all? The outcast, the tribe that was outcasted.
Oh, damn, I don't know the tribe, but I know you saying like you were saying they represent like Vikings or whatever.
Yeah, what's the name of that tribe? What was the character name? I'm looking right at him. This is the
It
African
started
guy.
with an N in Nduku or something like that.
And Dooku. Okay, so let me make sure we get that correct. Hold on, because I want to make sure I get the
I
proper
don't think I
name.
don't think that's what it is. That just came to my head.
It's something like that. Hold on. Let's get the name. Let's get the names right now. Hold on. Cast and crew. Okay, so boo boo boo. Oh yes, Mbaku. Mbaku. Yeah, so Mbaku, hold on, let me bring him up to the stage. 1 second, y'all.
Close enough. That was closer than I thought it was.
Hold on. I don't know what happened. I don't know if Connor dropped off. But so Mbaku, so he represents the Arctic tribe, the tribes that were at the top. I'm sorry?
Like Greenland.
What the name was in Baku.
Okay, yeah, it's Mbaku. Yep, Mbaku. So Baku, yeah, he represents the Arctic region tribes. Now my question would be to you all, because we all just building right now. And this is a theory. This is not definite, of course, because Marvel did not say this is definitely what the story is. I would ask you all, what part of Africa do you see tribes in the snow?
Um, I don't. I kind of made sense. Viking comparison made sense. So like people being in like Greenland, Norway, Scandinavia, because they were really well. First of all, Viking, that was more like a profession rather than like a actual bloodline of people. So they were melanated and non-melanated. But yeah, that's like when you first said that, it made total sense to me.
So to y'all understanding, are there any tribes in Africa that's in the snow? Just asking. Just asking if there's any. Because I don't want to say there is, and I don't know. I don't know.
Does it snow in Africa?
I believe the coldest part of Africa that it could potentially snow is South Africa.
That's what I was thinking. Like at
Yeah.
the very tip, or
Yeah,
maybe
because they're closer to Antarctica
right, or
region.
even Madagascar or something like that.
Okay. So, and one thing we do know is that they were in the mountains. Usually at the top of mountains, it is very cold, despite how hot it may be at the base of the mountain. So, being that these people represented the outcasted tribes that were in the Arctic regions, I went ahead and said, well, I'm doing a theory that this is the story of America. Maybe these are the Vikings, right? And at the top of the jumbotron, you can also scroll over. You'll see a photo of what we would say, a depiction of what potentially the Vikings look like. Not only just the black Vikings, but the white Vikings, because there were black and white Vikings, right? And then I also put up in a historical link that actually comes from the history, a history website that talks about that the Vikings did make encounters with the Native Americans, and that's how there is DNA here that they have found. So we know that this is not a theory. If or were Vikings were in America, no, the Vikings were definitely here in America. And if they were here in America, that means they never left. Okay. There is no account of the Vikings ever leaving. So then you have to ask yourself, well, who are the Vikings today? Right. Um, so I guess the next theory was in the thread. Let's see. Let me just make sure I go next theory. I'm gonna pass the mic to one of y'all. So the next theory was the civilized tribes. Now, in the Black Panther movie and in the comic book, I would say more so in the comic books, they actually emphasize that there are five civilized tribes. Um, in my thread though, I have the civilized tribes, or I would say the five tribes. And but in this particular comic book, I can't remember what author gave this depiction, but it was actually an Egyptian depiction of the tribes. So you have Basset, you have the Koku, the Mujaji, Thoth, and Ptah, the Sharper. And they all represent the leaders or deities of these five tribes. So I equated that to what we know today as five civilized tribes here in America. I can't imagine anywhere else in the world where there are five tribes that people particularly harp on the most, but in America. So I'm gonna lay my mic right there, and I'm gonna allow y'all to build and your opinions. Anyone want to chime in on their thoughts on the Black Panther movie? What are some comparisons that they've seen that looks like America, or they disagree? What are some things that they may disagree with and say that it is in fact an African story? Anyone? Damon, John.
Yeah, peace, y'all. Actually, the reason I got on is because I just wanted to answer your first question about the one character you were speaking on in Buku. I just wanted to answer that. If I have any more input, then I'll definitely chime in. But you can drop me down for now.
All right, no problem. Damon, do you have anything you want to add in?
Nah, I'm just replying to the great Negro. She quoted my tweet, and I'm typing up a response. I'm listening though.
Okay. All right. Anybody in the audience have anything they want to chime in about the theory of Black Panther being in the Americas? Anyone?
Matter of fact, I will say, I felt exactly like Killmonger when I started to learn, um, like the history about America and started talking to my parents about our ancestry and where we really come from. The more I started to learn, I felt just like that nigga. And well, I already told you this in the other room, but for the folks that's listening, like I felt just like him, man. And I was not thinking about that film when I was feeling the way I was feeling when I felt all that rage. I was not thinking about that movie at all, and I feel like whoever wrote that shit, um, just kind of predicted the way I felt and the way a lot of detribalized people felt, because his character really just represented um not just detribalized people, but like bloodlines, a royal bloodline of people that was disenfranchised. You know what I'm saying? Not just in the Americas, but um, man, even in Europe. Like if you want to go a little deeper, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of royal bloodlines over there um was dethroned. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe those people over there have like an admixture of those original melanated people. But and you could say that same thing for like the tribes over here, like the chiefs, the chiefs and the people in the council that run these tribes today. You could say the same thing. I'm sure, of course, some of them do. Like all of them aren't just straight up, posers. Some of them got great grandmas and great grandpas that were looked like the original people and were the actual people. But I'm rambling, but my whole point was to say, like, I feel
Yeah.
exactly like him.
I was gonna ask, what did you have about the movie though?
Um, well, as you know, Wakanda, that's in America. Um, I believe it's also not just in North America, but South America or Central America. Like we got a couple different springs called like the Wakanda Lake. We got cities called Wakanda in Illinois. They spell differently, of course. Um, yes, America is Wakanda, so to speak, or colloquially, if you're going to explain that to a person that don't understand. But Wakanda is in America, pops up in America multiple times. A lot of these tribes um were kind of congregating at the Wakanda Lake. The Kansa people, that was pretty much their territory, I believe. And I want to say that was like during like the Mississippian era, so like 800 AD to about like 1600s or something like that. That was their stomping grounds. The whole thing about like Killmonger going to the museum and just seeing his people shit. That's, man, you could tie that into what our people be doing when we go to museums. Like I don't know if you talked to Tasha lately, but she just went up to a, a museum in Virginia, and they changed Chief Powhatan's plaque. At first it said he was an Indian, now it says he's an African American and Native American garb. So it's like it even that's touching on like the reclassification and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that these people be taking uh our artifacts and monuments and just doing what they want with it, putting it in museums, shipping it all around the world. Um, that's what that scene made me think of. You know what I'm saying? Like it was almost like he was raiding the Vatican or some shit. You know what I'm saying? It was like that film almost. It was like somebody knew niggas was gonna wake up, and this would be the energy that they would feel within themselves. Like they would want all their shit back. They would want all their kingdoms and power back and artifacts and sovereignty and ability to help their people. Because really, that's what Killmonger wanted to do. Like he wasn't bucking shit just to buck. He really wanted to help so-called black people in America out. And that's what a lot of us want to do. Once we get this knowledge, once we start learning who we are and what happened in the Americas, you want to help people. You want to help them in the right way. You don't want to stand within blackness because that's just beating a dead horse. Um, and that's what type of time Killmonger was on. He actually wanted, put the put his feet on the ground. You know what I'm saying? Get out in the field and really do something. It wasn't just about taking over. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure he would have been right along with Killmonger if them niggas actually gave a fuck about people in America, but he knew they didn't. And that's kind of like how a lot of us feel. I can speak for myself. That's how I feel about, some of the natives. Like they know who the fuck we are, but they don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? They're not gonna tell us. Most of them aren't. I'm sure some of them are cool and they understand what happened to, a lot of our people that were detribalized and enslaved and marked off as Negro, black, colored, and things of that nature. But I think a lot of them is in the same position not Killmonger, but T'Challa is in. You know what I'm saying? Especially the ones with political power. But yeah, those my thoughts.
All right. Hey, Connor. Welcome back, Connor. I'm going to do a quick reset. We are talking about the Black Panther, the movie in America, and we are dissecting the movie, and we are also looking at different characters, different scenes, and how does it relate to the American story that we see happening today and in the past. Connor, before I go, I wanted to give you the floor as well. If you want to start off, we were talking about M'Baku, and M'Baku being that he is of a tribe that comes from the Arctic region. And I had asked the question, well, what area in Africa would you find an Arctic region tribe? And I don't think anyone really had an answer for me on what area of Africa where you see this type of tribe exist. So that went into my theory and why I even made my thread that M'Baku represents who we know as the Vikings. So I don't know if Connor, if you want to chime in on that.
Hey, Shan, just real quick. What do I always talk about? Who is Hanuman? Who is the one being he is connected to?
God is
That is their God.
Tahuti.
Exactly. Exactly. Make that make sense, right? And who is he tied to? Talk about the Vikings, that goes to Odin again. And then we walk Odin down, the Quetzalcoatl, Lord Toph, Tahuti of Atlantis. Boom. There we go. Lord Ganesha in Hinduism, you know, like come on, man. Like it'd be so right in front of us. The story makes so much sense a lot with all of it, but there you go. And even so-called the Black Panther. Who is the Black Panther? Remember when they were battling? He was like, "Who is your god?" T'Challa, the Panther god. My god is the great Hanuman. That and that's where I pull from. You pull from, Bast and Sekhmet. Come on, it's a tribal thing, it's a lineage thing, and it's a spiritual deity thing. My deity is more powerful than yours. Sounds like the Vikings too, when they would go to war, gear up, get out the mountains, they're cold too, that warrior Odin, so-called Tahuti energy, they're ready to fight. So that was definitely Shane. You hit it right on the basket, and I'll just land my little spacecraft right there about all that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I don't know if you weren't here yet, but we were talking about the five tribes, right? Now, in the comic book, they definitely stress that there's the five tribes. If you read my thread, I actually posted a screenshot of the five tribes, and the five tribes once again is Baset or Bast, Koku, Mujaji, Thor, Ptah, the Shaper. And these were your five tribes in the comic book. Now, in the movie, they don't really stress the name of the five tribes too much, but you'll see the five tribes sitting at the table. So the scene where Killmonger is like coming in and he's like, yeah, I want the throne. This is my throne. I won the throne. You'll see the five tribes that sit around the table pretty much. So,
And the elders
yeah.
too represent them, because even if
Yes.
remember Black Panther, he couldn't move. Even in the anime show, he couldn't make moves. It's not one man dictatorship. You don't just tell what they're going to do. You have to get permission from the elders, which are the representation of the ancestors, before you made any move, even in the animated show, the comic book, and etc. Even in the movie, you saw that. Even the elders would be, oh, he has the right to challenge T'Challa, because really he's our person. We as a collective of five people, we could disagree and he can just sit there and be quiet. So it's not a one man show, basically. He had to serve his elders and the council people. And that really showed a good example of kind of tribal ism right there in nationhood.
Right. Right. If I can quickly have everyone share the space to your timeline. You can use the arrow at the top, the arrow that points up with a little half a box. You just click on that, share it to your timeline. Also, if you have something to share, please jump on the stage. If you want to share any links, that would be really appreciated as we continue the conversation and we go into the next set of characters. So we started off with M'Baku, the five tribes, and let's get into Killmonger. Now, in my thread, I posted a picture of Killmonger, and in this photo, you can clearly see that nice copper color skin tone on him and his locks. And this is actually from the comic book. And in this particular screenshot, it says the comic says, "I'm Eric. I grew up around the way from you in Harlem. I'm the rightful head of the Wakandan Tribal Council." So I thought it was very interesting that in the movie, though, they have him in Compton. And I was like, well, why did they switch it from Harlem to Compton? And Connor, I know you're more so of the a movie head when it comes to Marvel. Um, any reasons why you think they would have switched his birthplace? Because in the comic book, he's from New York. So how the hell he get to California now in the movie?
Man, I don't know.
I wanted to speak on that.
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
you could go first. Because I'm doing something right now because cooking
Um,
and everything.
it's to tie it back into indigenous people in Oakland, the Black Panther Party. You know what I'm saying? These weren't Africans. These were indigenous young men and women who wanted to help their people the best way they knew how, but it didn't really work out the way they wanted to. You know, they was from what I can tell, what I know about the Black Panthers. I read a little bit about them years ago. Um, they was hardcore with it, but at the end of the day, they was about their community, and that's exactly what Killmonger represented in the film. Um, he didn't take no shit. Neither did they. He wasn't scared to get violent. Neither did they. Um, Also, Michael B. Jordan in real life, he's actually from Oakland. The director, what's his name, Coogler. He's also from Oakland. Uh, uh, like if you
So
wanted
so
to,
they pretty much changed the story to fit their story.
yeah, it's just to tie it back into
Exactly.
black
Yeah,
indigenous
because
people.
I'm like, Killmonger's from New York. He's from
Right,
Harlem.
right.
So why not keep the story as it is instead of making it a personal story
I thought you
from
knew that,
Oakland?
Shan. I thought you already knew that stuff.
Booth knew what?
Oh, like the Oakland connection in the film in real life.
No, I'm talking about why not keep it on board with the fact that he's from New York though. Why change the story? Because when you change the story, you change the premise of what it's telling. So now that you put it in Oakland, it's like what would that have to do with anything?
It's
with
all because
Killmonger?
you got to remember the whole movie is about indigenous people in America, and
Right.
Exactly.
New York has indigenous people. So
yeah, but I'm
that's
saying
Exactly.
don't
and see that's
they
why I tied in Harlem with the Manhattan Purchase. See, I did that later wrong about because remember all this is going to start in New York before we even get to
but the
Cali. Now,
Black
if
Panthers
you're gonna
didn't
deal with
start
Cali,
there.
if you what we talking
Hey,
about the
Shan,
Black
tell 'em
Panther
about Iron
Party,
Man.
what we talking about Indian business, you definitely got to talk about the Manhattan Purchase.
Absolutely,
And
the
being that he's from
the
Harlem,
masses don't understand the aspect is what I'm saying,
the
and then the
masses don't
character.
they don't understand a lot of different things.
Right, but
But
everybody knows the Black Panthers originate in Oakland, and they also
right,
know Coogler and Michael B. Jordan is from Oakland, and it's really just tying the correlation in, and that's what they decided to do.
right.
That's
But
all it
that's
really
not the.
is.
But what I'm saying, that's not the real story. That's not the Marvel comic book,
Right, but
and
that's
that's
not what
why
they was worried about.
I understand that, Damon. What I'm talking about, we're talking about the comic book, and there's a reason why I switched between the movie scenes and the comic book, because the comic book is going to show you a real story. And matter of fact, you'll see scenes of Killmonger fighting with the sorry, not Killmonger, I think it's the Black Panther. They'll be fighting against the KKK, right? See, you're not going to see
Yeah.
that in the movie. In the comic book, you'll get the real gist of an indigenous story. That's why I said, it just seems like they twist things around to fit their own personal story, but it kind of goes off track of the comic book. Actually, is more thorough and talks about it. Matter of fact, another screenshot. I'm gonna when we get there, I'm gonna actually explain it. You'll see another screenshot of a comic book from the Black Panther where they talk about, you know, basically Killmonger is asking, why are you going to turn my home into a technology, based society, right? See, that's not in the movie though. You know what I'm saying? So it's certain
Right.
things that
Yeah.
relate more in the comic book than it would, in the movie. But go ahead, Connor. Sorry.
Now, I was going to add a couple things because what you brought up with New York, it is so important in the Marvel comic universe. Tony Stark, Captain America, Bruce Banner, um, a couple other characters. They're from New York. Tony Stark is like he's looked at as the king of New York, even in the comic book. His father from New York, all the family from New York, but we also know that they're immigrants, XYB eventually when you go down his family tree, even in the comic book. But we're dealing with like New York, it's a very big hub. Like Bruce Banner had to battle with what's his name? What's his Abomination in New York. In Harlem too, by the way. And guess who was briefly in the movie? Michael Kenneth Williams. Go watch that 2008 movie with the first Hawk before they, changed them and gave it to Mark Ruffalo. So, I just had to highlight that. Shane, you're definitely right about New York. Remember, even Endgame, after Wakanda, where did they go next in Endgame? Upstate New York, outside the city, to battle who? Thanatos, so-called Thanos. And I said that also with the comic book too. You're definitely right because T'Challa was also polygamous. He had 3 wives, Nakia, what's her name, Storm, and Okoye at one point in the comic book. So yeah, he was a polygamist too, and they left that out, obviously for certain reasons, of course. Right, what they always do.
Hey, real quick. By the way, Shane, you keep pronouncing my name wrong. You gotta stop doing that.
Yeah,
But
Wait.
Damion. Yeah,
your room not at the
Oh
top
my
though.
God. Okay, is Damian or Damon?
Damien.
Damien. Okay, it's like two of y'all, three.
Hey, I
So
wanted to tell you
Damien. Okay.
your room not at the top. It's not showing up.
Oh, really? Let me see. Hold on. Oh, I see it on my screen.
Yeah, because I couldn't see it earlier, so I just went to your page.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. This thing janky. It's what it
Y'all
is.
see her room at the top of your phone? Because I can't.
It's janky on this app. I'm trying to be patient to do more spaces on Twitter, but it's
It's probably just because they fucking with your account. Because
when
you
they not.
talking about, yeah, that
maybe
is.
me too.
When are they not messing with our accounts? We over here trying to dissect the matrix. We got to expect that. All right. So we talked about, okay. So Killmonger, being from Harlem, and how they switched it to Compton, and I'm not even gonna touch on this next one because I think that should come at the end because that comes at the end of the movie. But so the next thing we talked about is the next character would be Wakabi. And Wakabi, he is the okay, so he was the one that said he would defend the throne no matter what. Y'all remember him? For T'Challa, the Black Panther throne?
Yes.
Yes. And he no, wait, no. I'm lying. It was his wife. His wife was the one that said that she's willing to defend the
Okoye.
throne. Okoye, right. But wasn't he actually willing to fight against the rulership, right?
Yes, she was because there were certain things that the elders did not agree to. Like, in the movie, she just brought up like we don't do things without the elders' permission. There are certain things you're doing that's just going against a traditional Wakandan way, and he didn't care. Which just showed you the disconnect and she called that out, and she did not support it because of that.
Okay, so there we have it. So she was calling him out. All right, so Wakabi, so in my thread, I have him as the European noble knight who protects the order. So why did I say that? Why did I draw this conclusion? Is because it reminds me of the noble Black European nobles that actually are Masons, Freemasons. They are your Shriners, your nobles, and they keep the order to make sure everything goes as planned. And when I saw him being so loyal to the throne of the Black Panther, despite how wrong it was, despite how insane or how much people were losing their minds about what was going on, he still felt like he had to protect the order and he has to protect the throne. So it reminded me so much, as we always talk about these Black Europeans who actually will go against the grain, even if it go against themselves, to make sure the order is kept in place. When do we see this? Well, let's talk about the Boule, right? We know that the Boule, and a lot of them do have European blood ties that go back to Europe, that they are often engaged in a lot of disruptive behaviors that deal with dismantling what we now call Black America. So if I don't know if Connor or Damon, if you guys want to chime in on that, on the Boule and the secret orders that they choose to protect in order to keep Black America at a certain state of mind. Anyone? Oh, yeah, I might be busy, right?
I mean, I could speak on it real quick. I definitely agree with you with that sentiment. With the dark skinned Europeans, of course, we always talk about, right? So yeah, I agree with that. I agree definitely that is that particular set of people. And you saw, right, with Daniel's character, Wakabi, we seen, when T'Challa was alive and the battle wasn't over, which is under their tradition, if he's still alive, the battle still goes on. He is the king. Because he never won like T'Challa, because he feels he never got rightful justice from his parents. He felt like T'Challa really didn't have it in him to kill the Claw, right? Even though we know what the Claw did, even in the comic book, we know what he did throughout the Black Panther storyline. We know T'Challa wants his head more than anybody. In the animated show, he ripped his head out and his intestines and handed it to him on the show, which is kind of graphic, which is why I kind of see why they discontinued it. But and as well as what he said at the end too, he said, I'm going to kill you, and I'm glad you don't have any kids because I have to get them too. That's how savage he was against Claw. He really never liked Claw, deep hatred towards Claw, no sympathy at all. So we know Wakabi felt the same sentiment. And in the movie, they wrote T'Challa to never get him, obviously. Killmonger betrayed him because he was partners with him and then brought his head. That's kind of like maybe some people there will like it because I'm doing something your king never even did. So within Wakabi's character and just that whole lineage over there that he's representing, we know that, even when the challenge for the throne was up, Wakabi could have stepped up and they would have had an equal fight. He would have obviously took his serum, the power would have been taken away, and you could have went one-on-one just like M'Baku did. He never chose to do that. So with him, his character is really interesting. But we also know he really loves, obviously in the movie, he loves Okoye, but we know in the comic book that romantic relationship never even manifested into nothing because we know, and we all know Okoye in the comic book was already wifed up by T'Challa, right? And even in the movies, remember, even in Infinity War, we see Okoye show that affection for T'Challa in the movie as well, Infinity War, and the other shows after, even when she came back. So, it's just really interesting how they wrote this compared to the comic book. They took certain parts out, they added some parts in, they made some imaginary relationships, I like to say. But he definitely is representing that. But we obviously seen the line with the divine feminine sister that's standing up for the throne for what is right, put him in his place. And yeah, we kind of saw that in the movie. And he got on his hands and knees and just apologized for him betraying the throne because that's what he did, which is a form of treason in their culture. Yeah.
But did he have a point? because I think his sentiment was that anybody who sits on that throne, it's my job to protect them. Whether your feelings is that they should not be there or not, Killmonger won his seat at the throne fair and square, and he does have the bloodline, so he has the right to sit on the throne. So was he wrong for
That
saying
remind me of our tribes.
like, yeah, was he wrong for saying that he's supposed to protect that throne despite how the elders and clan mothers may feel?
Um, well, my response to that would be, I mean, the traditional way goes like that was said. He was alive. They thought he was dead. We've seen him come back to life now with the serum and also with his suit on. I am here. I'm not dead. So by default, right, as it was done, it was undone, right? Your power is now taken away as the king. You need to finish this battle. You know what I'm saying? Because you never should have been given that position because it was a misunderstanding and misspokenness about him being dead. Because he was still conscious. He was just obviously in the river, and they did what they did to him and gave him the serum to get his heart back up. Which that's what it could do too. That plant is very special. There's other plants like that in the world. So we know of herbs, and dealing with sea moss and herbs. There's all kinds of plants that can do certain things for you. Some of that aren't even
Right.
spoken about. But so that's just my sentiment, how I feel, because I'm going and looking at the traditional way of how the movie said they were doing things. Because I know in the comic book it's a little different as well, even with that.
Right.
Yeah.
How
Right.
much is the actual Marvel movies synonymous with the actual comic? Because it don't seem like none of the movies are like the comic, and that's on purpose. Like with
Yeah.
Exactly.
any
Yeah.
movie that has to do with a book or some type of literature, they're never gonna make it like the book, and that's the whole point of the movie.
Same with Lord of the Rings and
Yeah. You know
the other
what?
movies.
I
Yeah.
think maybe it's about intellectual property. Maybe there's a debate there. I don't know, because you would think that Marvel, I mean, they're the ones producing the comic book, so they should be able to produce the movie just like the comic book. But it seems like once it becomes a movie, it's more so agenda driven, and
Absolutely.
you can clearly see that the Black Panther movie had a clear agenda of like this diaspora war type of energy.
Hey Connor, I wanted to ask Connor, have you seen what's the movie when Chadwick is playing Thoth? Have you seen that?
Exactly. You know what,
Because
brother?
that ties into
That
this.
is where
That
we
ties into
Oh,
say
this.
oh
that's
wow.
he showed he was very bold with that. And he's the only melanated, like to me,
Actor.
I've never seen Lord Toth played so well in a movie as well as how he
Hey,
really looks
hey
somewhat
Connor,
to a
check this
degree.
out.
And that's just my opinion with that one right
Have
there.
you
That was
have you
very good
heard
what he did.
have you heard that these roles, these Hollywood roles, especially the major roles, the cast members are chosen
Oh, definitely.
Oh
by
yes.
hold on. They're
I'm sorry, you
chosen.
can't get it out, but 100%.
Hold on, wait. Listen. They're chosen by Vedic astrology. So like somebody's doing their astrology in the Vedic
Yeah.
Hindu system, and that's, you know what I'm saying? They're using the actors for that. So they're getting very specific people whose like birth chart or whatever aligns with the stars and shit.
They also do genealogy to find out
Yeah,
who.
exactly. Tell them it goes both ways, astrology and genealogy. It's always an ology, isn't it? It make that make sense,
The
right?
study of the study of.
Yeah, they definitely do genealogy. Because it's not a coincidence when you look at, let's say, how we were breaking down about the sports teams, right, and how different sports teams have a different story. Every name, like, okay, the Cavaliers, right? What was the Cavalier? Cavalier was someone that was protecting what? King,
Yes.
and King James, and who's the King James of the Cavaliers team? LeBron James. His last name
Yo.
James. So break down his family history through his genealogy. Come on, he's a descendant of King James.
And who did he have alongside him? He had the Indian, so-called Kyrie. Come on, man. Like,
Right.
and hey, just speak on
Hey, and the
basketball real quick. Hold
Cleveland
on, hold on.
Indians. And
Oh,
it
yeah,
because it
the
was in
Cleveland
Cleveland.
Indians. Hold up. Now look at this, right? Real
Woo!
quick. I'm gonna tell you something. Think
Scripted
about this.
reality.
No, think about this, right? Guess where Kyrie's trying to go back to, even though a couple years ago we dissed LeBron. Guess where he's trying to go back to right now, so LeBron can finish off his career. And LeBron said, I will not sign this extension next year if
And
you
a
don't bring
Laker.
Kyrie here.
And
He's
what is
trying
a
to be a
Laker?
Laker. Yeah,
What is a Laker?
exactly.
That was
Exactly.
That was in the Great Lakes region. And what was that?
That
That
was in
was a
Minnesota.
major. That was a
Yeah.
major trade hub for Indians.
Yeah, and let me tie that real quick too, right? Because my great uncle in my adopted lineage, Bill Patterson, rest in power to that brother, who was 6'10", light skinned Carmel Indian. He was in between that. He played for the Minneapolis Lakers before they went to LA. And one of the biggest things that he told our family, as well as another guy I met like 5 years ago, told me about the Minneapolis Lakers. They left because of money and other reasons. That other reasons is what's got me a little thinking. But they were the Minneapolis Lakers before they were the LA Lakers. It's actually Lakers. It's funny how they say like, right? It's not like, it's Lakers, land of the lakes. There's no lakes in California like that, bro. But there's a big ocean. There ain't no lakes, though. Make that make sense. Come on. I even have the original jerseys. My cousin made the kids wear them after Kobe passed, and me and him made a joke when we were at the game and we wore this at the Kanye game, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, funny, huh? Kanye came to town, we wear the jerseys. So we have the Minneapolis Laker jerseys. They were blue and white, It's funny how they go to yellow now. Make that make sense. Seemed like Hollywood took over right there for show. Took it from the original origin. And that's what I wanted to add there too. I know a lot about the Minneapolis Lakers, so-called the LA Lakers now. It's really our team, but it's cool. They could have it. LA could have it. That's all I gotta say.
Hey Connor, can you speak on that role, on that talk role in Gods of Egypt with Chadwick? Because I haven't seen it. I gotta find
Oh,
it.
that was a test.
To see
It
if he
was a
could play
test.
T'Challa.
Oh yeah, because see, they're gonna hide the truth even in their fictional stories. So he played the true Lortoff in the movie. He did a very good job too. His books, his everything. That's when you interface with Lortoff and Ethereum like I do, that's what you're gonna get. All right, that's all I gotta say. He loves books too. You if you ever offer or give him thanks, he loves a good book. That's all I
Right.
gotta say.
It's
Just put
crazy.
that out there.
It's crazy how it's like it's already based on mythology. Like it's already based on Egyptian mythology, but they using that as like the backdrop, and it's indirectly connected to the Black Panther film because obviously we know all that knowledge and architecture that they got over there in Africa is just either hijack or some shit that niggas over here was doing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like once you tie that into the film, it's that much colder when you make the connection, man. I still haven't figured it out because obviously I haven't watched that movie yet. But yeah, that's some deep shit.
Right. Um. So to tie that back into the Black Panther movie, so we have the Vikings, we have the five tribes, we have the American Indian, Killmonger, we have Wakabi, the European noble knight, representation of the Boule,
Hey,
and
you didn't speak on this last
we
tweet.
have hold on, then we have Claus, the untrustworthy mountain and caveman. Now, the reason why I had drawn this connection once again is because Claus, he's just a very nefarious character. He just goes around doing a bunch of random things that just you can't trust nothing that Claus does, right? Right. So I drew that connection to the cavemen because a lot of times the cavemen were trained and weaponized to attack different villages and civilizations. You can even say that today, that a lot of those rednecks and people that we know today that did come out of those cave-like mentalities. You laughing, Connor? Um, a lot of those people.
I know all about them. Trust me.
They remind me of claws. Like you can just tell them anything. You could program, like MK Ultra program them to just go after something and attack it. And they'll do that. They'll do just that. They have nothing to lose, nor do they have anything to gain. Go ahead, Connor. I see your hand up.
Yo, Shan, you know what show you would really like because MK Ultra, all that. In the animated show, when he attempted to kill T'Chaka, which eventually succeeded, in particular to his role in the show, MK Ultra everything, like, you know what's funny? The Bilderbergs got their hands on Claw when he died in the process. The first time he attempted to kill him, the second time he didn't miss. That's why he got famous, and they started giving him more money. You know what else they started doing too? They gave him a team of superhumans to attack Wakanda. That's why even the BET show, and you know what's sad is, you know, they have Jaimon Hunsu playing him in the TV show. I still think it was a little bit, because it get a little deeper in the series show, because obviously you could do more than just like one movie. But you know, they went really deep, and Claw, like they MK'd Ultra him after they found him, because they had to bring him back to life some kind of way with their technology. They gave him billions of dollars. They gave him metahumans eventually. Anything they could reach their hands on, they were grabbing. They were paying these contractors. They were giving him mini armies of robots to operate through the CIA, right? And it was funny, they put Obama in the show at the end because he had to apologize for, you know, some of his black book operations getting out of line. Otherwise, T'Challa would hold the U.S. in, you know, court, because they are no but a corporation. And even how they treated him like a royal king. They couldn't touch him certain ways, like no bill for damage. It's basically how we Indians like supposed to be operating to a degree. And you know, even in the movie, as well as the comic book and the animated show, you can see a lot of legalese in there too, because they acknowledge him as the king of Wakanda, see that the UN, they're their own nation, everything else. But basically, Claw. Another thing is on the spiritual note with Claw. When T'Challa in the show first started coming in contact with him, he started to have these dreams of this white leopard who had these big claws, and he was the spirit of like what his father couldn't do with getting rid of Claw. And it's just this ancestral curse or something that he has to deal with in the show. And basically, Claw was a representation of that white leopard, I feel. And I think, you know, because they cut the show off, we'll never really get an answer after like 6, 7 episodes, and they finished up with him. But the animated show was really, really good at going more deep into that, so called, than the movie.
Okay,
So yeah, Claw was, you know, mind controlled and paid by the elite to go
definitely.
after him, because you know what's funny? His dad refused to, also just real quick, his dad refused to let them in Wakanda with the UN and everything else to a degree that they wanted to, as well as he refused to put vibranium as a world product. And T'Challa kept the same sentiment, but obviously we know what he did later in the movie. But you know, so it was interesting how they dealt with them in the animated show, as well as going into Bilderbergs, and I think that's why they canceled it too, because they started showing these billionaire trillionaires with all this money trying to offer them money, and that's why they tried to kill him too, because they told Claw, they gave him all the money. They said, hey, we know he's going to reject. He's done it before. If he does it this time, you know, we're not going to be nice. Take him out.
And see, a
And
lot of
they tried to do that, yeah.
that the Bilderbergs control, at least they did at one point, controlled a lot of things here in the Americas. A lot. Um, their hands are dirty, very much dirty. You know, shout out to the book "Behold a Pale Horse" by William Cooper, because that book definitely breaks down the Bilderbergs and their involvement in a lot of the Masonic and Freemasonry. I would say establishments and different plans and deals that was supposed to be brought to fruition, and their money and their power is always behind a lot of different things. Now, some people said the Bilderbergs are starting to lose their power. I don't know how truthful that is, but they
They
definitely,
are to a degree, but it's still there.
yeah, they're still there though. They're still there. The hidden hands, they still there. So even so, we got the claws, we got the cavemen that are MK Ultra mind control to just kind of go on dummy missions as they do now. And then the next person is Everett Ross. Now, y'all gonna love this one. For those of us that study the Black European history, we know Ross clan, Stewart clan, right? All right, so Everett Ross, that's his name in the movie, and
Ross Clan.
he was actually the one that infiltrated into Wakanda. So he was the one that they saved. He was the mysterious white man they saved and they brought to Wakanda. Everybody's like, why you all always have this mysterious white guy that y'all have to save in the movie? But so my theory on Everett Ross was that he was a white passing black nobility offspring that was put into a position of power. And why do I say that? Why? because based upon his character, if you notice, like I said, the way how he was even maneuvered to be able to go into Wakanda and for them to feel obligated to save him, it just reminds me of the black nobles and their white passing mulatto biracial children. A lot of the so-called people that we see today that are white and that have high positions of power, you go deep in their line, you'll see that they are connected to some of these black noble families. Connor, you want to go jump in?
I just thought about that last name, Ross. And you know
Ross.
what's funny, Shan?
Oh,
In the comic book and in the TV show, he is the head director of the CIA, which we know is a spy intelligence infiltration agency. You know
oh,
what's funny?
oh.
In the animated show, let me add something real quick. He gave a briefing to Obama and the CIA heads, as well as these other Bilderberg groups, about why they should not try to infiltrate Wakanda. And he told them about the culture. He told them about what he found out. He told them about the one time he got stuck there. He told them about, guess what, Shan? They sent their best at the time in World War II to investigate some
Mm,
Nazi situation. Guess what they found out? They sent Captain America there, which they made Captain America seem way more, you know, like an a-hole and more, yeah, just not what we've seen on the TV as well as the comic book. But he went toe to toe with T'Chaka, and T'Chaka got told, "I already seen a vision of you, Captain. I suggest you leave, or I will put you down. That is a warning. You need to leave and get out of here. I took care of the Nazis. They were looking for our vibranium. I already know this. My intelligence is above yours, and I have scientists that are more smarter than yours. So I suggest you leave now." Captain said, "I cannot do that." Guess what he did? He threw his vibranium shield. He was like, "You think you're cute with this vibranium shield? I have a suit, and my people have been using this stuff way long time. Your man Stark stole this from us. I don't mind taking it back, but here you go." He threw it back at him. They had a little tussle. He put him down. They've never, CIA never saw that. That was their best asset they had to go against any government or anything that they ever had. After that, obviously, was Bucky after Captain got frozen, because then they pumped him with the same drugs after they dissected Captain America's blood. So basically, I just wanted to add that real quick in Everett Ross's briefings. And you could see in the show too, the story that I literally was talking about will literally like come to life more, and you could see it in the show way better than me explaining it. So it was really good. But yeah, you could definitely see that Ross was like spying and
mm,
infiltrating. It's kind of like a family thing, isn't it? Huh? Isn't that something? What do you
yeah.
think?
Definitely a family thing because we talk about the Ross clan, Stewarts, and the closeness between those two families. And some of your famous Rosses are John Ross. That would be the one who will go on to start what we know now as the Cherokee tribe. Well, he actually is the one that's going to create. Let me make sure I'm correct, 'cause I misspeak. But I believe he is the one that is going to make the Cherokee language, right? And what's very interesting about John
Nah, that's
Ross.
Sequoia. That's
Was that
Sequoia.
Sequoia? Okay, yeah, you're right. That is Sequoia. So John Ross was the one that is he isn't he the one that started or
Not he kind
no?
of like usurped and created the Cherokee. At least he gave it that name, or that's what's
Yeah.
written in written history.
He was a Cherokee chief. His mother was a Cherokee Indian, as we would say today, a Cherokee. His father was Scottish though, right? So
Do
he
you think her and Amaranta are related on that
yeah,
Scottish line?
get to that. So it was very interesting about John Ross is that if you look up right now, research John Ross and Moses of his people, you will see that they called him the Moses of his people of the Cherokee tribe. Now, what's going to also happen with Araminta Ross, right? Araminta Ross is also who we now know today as Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman, as well, is going to be coined the Moses of her people, right? You can go ahead, search both their names and put Moses of people and see what pops up. Both of them had the same title. Both of them come from the Ross clan. So when we talk about the noble families and the Ross, these white passing nobles, it's not far fetched to see that a lot of these so called white people today, If you go back about 13 generations, sometimes not even that far back, you will see that they definitely have some sort of melanated forefathers and foremothers. I'll say that. So the next thing, basically, what I started to do was to break down the American Negro and why why did I come to these conclusions about um my theories. So I posted the top just now. Scroll over. I just posted. This is where I'm going to start reading just a little bit. And this is from my tweet of when I was giving my theory on the American story through the Black Panther. And I said, Killmonger is trying to reclaim his land's throne from the African royals, European nobles, and their white passing offspring have hid his inheritance in plain sight. But the story of the American Indian is the story of the American Negro. And I actually put some images where you see that Killmonger definitely goes toe to toe, as we saw in the movie, with T'Challa. Now, in the movie, he's going toe to toe with T'Challa for the throne. Now, you would say it's the throne in Africa, but for me, my theory, I say it's the throne in America. That it isn't actually indeed the African that wants to take the throne in America, and they're wanting to fight the American Negro or the American Indian for the power to control American resources. So, yeah, Damon, go ahead. It's on you.
I noticed in this thread, you didn't have like a position for the people that are actually in these tribes. You know, the amalgamated person, the amalgamated Native American.
Nah, I just dealt with the characters that we know from the movie.
No, but I'm saying like you got a representation for every character except for them. You didn't think about that.
I mean, there's no character to represent them right now. Right now.
You know what?
I think
That's
Neymar's
probably
coming in
gonna
for.
be Neymar. I ain't even think about it. That's probably gonna be Neymar in the second one
Yeah,
because
I didn't
because
get
they
that far.
did come later. Like if we relating it back to American history, the Native American did come later
Well,
after everything
in
you
my
posting about.
thread, I do bring up the Mongols, the Mongolians. Is at the bottom of it, but we didn't get there yet. We didn't get to the Mongolians and why his name is Killmonger. I broke all that down and I put the etymology of it inside this thread. So, but we didn't get there yet because I was going to tie that into Eastern Woodland Territory and what were some of the wars possibly really about? Invasion and also the articles that did come out about. Now these are from white scholars, right? So we're going to take it from a grain of salt, but I am going to take it nonetheless, right? Where they have articles coming out that it was Asians colonizing or trying to colonize the Americas. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna post that link to the top of the room so y'all can see it. But they are the European is trying to say that the Asians came here to colonize. They were unsuccessful in their attempts, and that when the European came to colonize, they just was more successful, right? And why are they coming to those conclusions? Because they understand that the Native American that does have the Asiatic background is not truly indigenous here, but they've been here for a while, but they're not indigenous here. So when we get to that point, I'm gonna talk about why I came to the conclusion that there was a war for America before the European got here. Um, so yeah, so the next slide. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Connor. I see your hand raised.
Well, you're definitely right when it comes to the war before the Europeans got here, and even the Pavuvu that the Aztec show that as well. Because people forget, even like I always had the question, man. I think it was Genghis. He said he wants to he said he wanted to conquer the world. You don't think that didn't include America? Like people make that make sense, you know? Because we have proof of them coming over here and the Aztec Maya ancestors going to work, them cutting their heads off and doing all kinds of things. So yeah, that's where even like when we talk about the Pacific slaves, so yeah, they came over later. You're definitely right. But who are these other people that's probably been up and made mixed in our tribes because we just had some things go on, so we didn't kill them all and they ran to the plains and and they ran up and made their own little packs. You know, that's what I just feel that over there, and that's a history that definitely I am looking to connect with my spirit guide Bubba more about, because he definitely could show me the real story of what really happened through the Akashic records and just his ancestral stories, as well as
Right.
even what I could get with writing, because I always like to put the two together to make a clear picture. And that's what we do over here, because we give thanks to our medicine men, shamans and stuff. Yep.
Go ahead, Damon.
You could go, brother.
Hey, do you think um and this to Connor, do you think like this next film, part two, this is gonna touch on the indigenous wars that led into indigenous people being POWs and enslaved and traded around? Do you think that's gonna touch on that aspect of the history, because it's
Um,
obviously like playing on the actual history and mythology?
well, I definitely feel Namor will, because we gotta understand Namor, like he is the Aquaman of like the Marvel universe, and he's a mutant because he's Atlantean. But in
Damn, I think it might cut out. You might have got a phone call.
Okay, he probably got a phone call. We'll wait till he come back. So we do a quick reset while he's coming back. This is we're talking about the topic of Black Panther, the movie in America, and it is based upon my thread and theory, and I broke down each character, the main characters, I'll say, and what possible role do they play to modern day America. So I'm going to run down the characters one more time before we continue. So we had Umbaku. Umbaku was actually a tribal leader or chief of a tribe of the Arctic region. I asked people in the room today, what area of Africa will you find Arctic tribes? Tribes in the snow. Well, not too many people had an answer, just like I didn't have an answer. So I said this reminds me of the Vikings, right? And we know that the Vikings made contact with the so-called Native Americans here, as I posted a scientific article that talks about
oh,
how
my
they
bad.
found Viking. Okay, yeah, I'm doing a quick reset and then I'll go back to you, Connor, and how they found Viking DNA here in North America. So the Vikings were here prior to the European arrival, right? So the next character that we went into, well, the next theory was the five tribes. The five tribes. Now, this is they don't really harp on this in the movie too much, but you will see the five tribes sitting at the table when they're having their council meetings. But in the actual comic book, they actually have a depiction of the five tribes, which I put in my thread, and they have more of an Egyptian type of background, it seems like. So you have Bats, you have Koku, you have Mujaji, Thor, and you have Ptah, the Shaper. And these were the deities of the five tribes. And I correlated that to the five civilized tribes here in America, only because it's only the only place in the world where we see a five tribe emphasis that constantly keeps happening. Only in North America do you see the five tribes that sit at a council, and they pretty much dictate the future of a lot of other tribes that are neighboring and nearby, right? The next one that we broke down was Killmonger, the American Indian. Now, in the movie, he is depicted being from Compton, California, and Damon here made the connection between Compton also being the birthplace of the Black Panther Party. But in the comic book, as well as the screenshot that I showed, Killmonger is actually from Harlem, New York. So later on, I actually am going to explain why I felt it was so important to probably keep it as a Harlem, New York story than a California story. But I do understand the correlations between the Black Panther Party. So then we went down to Wakabi, and I put him as the European noble knight who protects the order, or as we know them today as the Boule here in America. A lot of the Boule do have European blood ties. They are melanated men and women, and they do have an order to protect, even if that order goes against their own agendas. So that is Wakabi. Then we went into Claus. Claus being the untrustworthy mountain-sized caveman, right? Claus is the one in the movie that y'all see run around looking crazy, white guy. Yeah, who was trying to steal the vibranium and stuff. So claws, it's for what we broke down, was like basically an MK Ultra plant that people have taken from the mountains and used to attack other civilizations. And who do we see doing this a lot? Well, fairies can have it that in Europe, when we used to see that these cavemen used to attack certain villages and certain towns and in different empires, um, could they have been programmed to do that? Could they have been programmed to give off diseases to kill people in what we know now as the Black Death? Being that now, if you go to the History Channel, the Black Death was actually caused by human beings. It was not caused by rats. And you could definitely go look that up, that they are now admitting that this was a human virus, and that we know that from what we study, it did come from these hairy cavemen and women that came out the mountains. All right. So the next character we just got into was Everett Ross. And Everett Ross, he was that mysterious white guy who ended up going to Wakanda and they had to heal him. And everybody was like, why the hell you got a random white guy getting healed? All right. So the reason why he was so important to me to be having a place in this American story is because he reminds me of the white, passive, black, noble offspring who are put in positions of power. And why do I say that? Because look at that last name, Everett Ross. A lot of Rosses, a lot of powerful Rosses that play behind the scenes. And we know about the Ross clan and the Stewart clan, European noble families. Some of your most notable Rosses is John Ross with the Cherokee tribe, who was one of the first Cherokee chiefs. And then you also have Harriet Tubman, whose real name was Araminta Ross. And if you actually read up on Araminta Ross, you will see that most of the people that she so-called freed were either with the last name Stewart or they had the last name Ross. So these were her family and friends, and it was about 70 of them that she took to the North. So I definitely encourage people to read more about the Harriet Tubman story and the real truth about who she so-called freed and how these were her family and friends from the Ross and Stewart clan. All right, so now we're getting into the American Negro, and this is kind of going to what Damion was saying about how you were talking about how when you felt like a killmonger when you would go through museums and you look at different artifacts, and or you would hear or see in other indigenous so-called people practicing certain traditions, and you feel like, wait a minute, that's my tradition. Why am I not allowed to practice that same tradition, right? So that rage, that anger, excuse me, the feeling of erasure that's happening right before your eyes. So I actually have the clip where I actually put in my thread where I basically put this background. It says the American Negro walking into museums of artifacts stolen from its home, seeking a land while it's hidden in plain sight beneath his feet, watching the world prosper while his children are written out of history. They say he's lost, but he's in fact home. Now, um, this part I think I'm going to play. I'm gonna let Connor speak, and then I'm gonna get the audio up so I can play it to the room so y'all can hear it. And if you want, matter of fact, let me share it to the top of the room so you can watch it with me. All right, so I just shared it to the top of the room, that clip. And if you want, you definitely can you'll see what I'm talking about, where basically everyone's telling you that you're homeless, you have home, you have no culture, but yet everyone's here to come and take your home and your culture. And this is the story of the American Negro who continues to look for self outside of self, not realizing that self is right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and play the audio after Connor. Go ahead, Connor.
Oh no, I bet my cousin called me. You know, shout out to him for what he does for the children with the prep school and what he does. And he was giving me a little update on that about a minute. So I told him, like, hey, I'm gonna get back to this Twitter space and I'll talk to you later, brother. But no, so I was going into Namor, and just how he's portrayed in the comic book. He is definitely like he's a villain, but he's a villain with his own purpose, and even sometimes he'll work with people like Tony Stark, people like even Captain America, because they had a secret friendship that they did not make like public. Um, in certain comic books, he never was even a villain at all. So it's his character is a wild card, I like to say, but most of the time he's a villain. He's for his own purpose. So Namor, I definitely feel with the actor they got, we got to study that dude's lineage. Because he's an interesting character. I've seen him in other movies. So I definitely feel it was tested and he passed. So we're gonna watch and see Namor of how they portray him because they're going for more Maya origin now and the Aztec one, I guess, from what they're saying. So that's going to be really interesting as well because they also go to the Atlantean story. I remember they said in Iron Man 2, when Nick Fury sat Tony Stark down, there was a map and it had so-called Atlantis and it wasn't too far from South America, Brazil area, which I already kind of, Atlantic Ocean, obviously Atlantis is just right down there. So he, comes up sometimes in like the comic book, but obviously because of the Fox tie-up, they couldn't just say that, but they hinted at it like they always do. And this was in like the end credit scenes with Tony Stark. So, Tony is definitely aware of Namor and the Atlantis. I bet you he's even gotten down there just like, his father with touching the vibranium because they always like to experiment and do certain things. And we know with Ultron, we know what he did there. So he's kind of suspect and like suspicious of touching things he doesn't understand or know. I also do know, he definitely knows about that place. So it's going to be real interesting how they set up Namor, especially with this new kind of very different origins in the comic book. But I'll see what they pull from the comic book and what they don't, because I know him and Shuri go toe to toe, right, Shan? And Shuri is winning as the Queen of Wakanda, newly pronounced, because he welcomed himself in Wakanda unannounced, making accusations. So they went toe to toe. Shuri was winning. Guess what happened, Shan? Just guess. Just guess real quick. What do you think happened near the end of the battle?
Enlighten us.
Okay. No, so Shuri throws him in the water. In the comic book, it's like T'Challa would never do that. I think it was like a little meme or something. I would never did that, right? Because he's a ocean being. Why would you throw him in the water? So he gets thrown in the ocean. He was just about to die. He becomes now stronger than even Hercules. Shuri ain't ready for that. Shuri starts getting whooped. So-called T'Challa comes back to life again. Isn't this funny? In this comic series that I was reading. And T'Challa took care of him after, the water wore down and he threw him away from the water. And Shuri almost lost her life. And she bowed and, thanked T'Challa, her brother, for saving her life. So Namor's an interesting character. He has fought the likes of Hercules, Thor, which you just saw Thor Love and Thunder. I have no doubt Thor will definitely probably maybe look at him again and other characters because they like the cross reference, to make it seem like, especially come on, like Thor is in Wakanda Infinity War. We already know, right? So think about that. Just to put that out there, yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll get into that a little later about the Mayan character that's going to be added into Black Panther 2. And what exactly is that storyline going to be like?
Atlantean as well.
Is this put out. So I'm going to go ahead and play the clip at the top of the room. And it's about the American Negro. And this was the clip that inspired me why I made my assertion about my theory. 1 second.
I gave you a key, hoping that you might feel it. But I fear you still may not be welcome. Eric joined the SEALs and went straight to Afghanistan, where he wrapped up confirmed kills like it was a video game. Started calling it kill mode. This one is for a kill. Listen up, you're comfortable. Must feel good. Ask why. Why didn't you bring the boy home? He was the truth I chose to admit. I'm exercising my pleasure. The challenge for the man is king. And Black Panther. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us. Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all. Maybe your home is the ones that's most easy. That's why I keep fighting. I never hear that. As you can see, I am not dead. Wakanda forever.
All right. And that ends with the fact he says the world took everything away from me. And like I said, that clip definitely inspired me further into my theory about feeling lost, not feeling found, feeling like you don't have an abundance of anything while you are all around everything you always ever needed. And everyone else telling you that you have to seek have to seek something external in order for you to have a sense of belonging, right? And when I'm watching that clip, I was like, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna hold y'all, right? Honestly, I came off the top of my dome with this. I don't know what the heck was going on. This might have been the time. Matter of fact, this was the time when I was in the hospital, you guys. I was about to give birth, and it just came to me, right? And then as I was making the thread, I'm looking for clips, and like the clips just kept making sense. I'm like, wait a minute, am I making something make sense right now? It wasn't even like I watched the movie and I saw this. This was just even though I have seen the movie before. But in that moment, it was literally like spur of the moment. And at this time period, I was making a lot of threads too. Because a lot of things were just coming to me while I was like kind of in the hospital and I was just kind of chilling. I had a lot of things that was running through my mind. And I just put it out there, right? And this was one of the theories. And I started seeing it from a lens, not from an African descendant lens, but what about the American descendant lens? What about as the American, when you're walking through the Indian museums, when you're walking through, or even going to a powwow, or going to all these different things, and you realize that, wait a minute, something's not right, right? You feel that something's disconnected, something's not right, something's not clicking, right? You go into the museums, like I have done this, right? And I've shared numerous times when I went to museums that are related to my family. Like there's certain families that my family was connected to, whether we used to work for them or something like that, or they actually might be a distant relative here in New York City. And I've been to these museums, and when you're looking at the artifacts, you literally feel like you're walking and you're listening to, or you're hearing things about your own story, but yet it's not your story, but you don't know how to put it and make it make sense, right? And I actually, when I went to the museum about the Robert Townsend, and you guys, I encourage you guys to go to this museum. It's out there in Oyster Bay, New York. I have some ancestors that came from Oyster Bay, or that were buried in Oyster Bay, New York as well, and they're heavily related to the American Revolutionary War, right? And I went to the museum. This was like a couple months ago, and I spoke to the tour guide right before I started the tour, and I said, excuse me, um, I have a relative in my family line who has this last name, right? And I also have another relative who was buried in this particular city. So I'm really just here to do some research to figure out the story. Now, the lady kept trying to convince me that I had to be one of the African slaves that was on the plantation. Like, oh yeah, they had slaves. I'm like, no. My people weren't slaves. They were free. No, they weren't slaves. She's like, yo, you know what? you know, yeah, I mean, no, there were a lot of slaves here, the Townsend family, they had their own slaves that worked in their plantations, that they had Irish indigenous. I said to her again, I said, no, that's not my story. I said, let me ask you a question. What can you tell me about the slaves in New York? And she said, well, one of the things that you should know is that slaves in New York didn't have last names. I said, I said, well, how is it that my family has this last name then? She said, well, maybe they took it when they left. And I said, I don't think that's quite how it works. Right? So we actually did a whole tour guide. And literally, as she's telling the story of the house, because it was actually a house turned to a museum. As she's telling the story about the house and the histories, you honestly feel like someone's telling your story, but they're excluding you out the story in the same time, right? So that's when I felt the way how I felt like what Damion was just saying, how Killmonger felt when he's walking through the museum, where there's someone telling your story, but they're excluding you out the story because the only part of the story you have to fit is the part that has nothing to really claim in that scenario right
Hey,
there.
real quick, I'm a
Go ahead.
when I was telling you about the museum aspect, I was talking about Tasha. I'm gonna try to send her the room and see if she could talk about that little experience she had.
Right, right. And I definitely know my experience being that I've been in museums related to my family and how it was like listening to someone tell my story. I already know my story. I just wanted to see what she knew because I knew my Townsends. They came from upstate New York, but I also know they possibly are still related to these Townsends, right? But to hear her tell the story in third person and put me almost in fourth person, it was like, ah, oh, so that's how you guys been doing this all these years now. So you tell the American history, but you tell it in a way that where, to be honest, if you are so-called black, you're not supposed to fit the story at all. And wherever you do fit, you're supposed to be just a slave. You have no claim to an artifact. You have no claim to this peace pipe that was in the, that was literally in the museum. I'm like, what?
Hey Shan, I think when she told you that maybe your family took the name when they left, I think that goes back into the Reconstruction era and the switcheroo of the identities, right? Because maybe the so-called slaves did do that, but we know white people did that, and we know they were the slaves. So that might be what she's talking about, but she don't understand that aspect of the story. She just knows some people was enslaved and they could have taken somebody's name because they didn't originally have it. And we know Caucasian people that came over here didn't, a lot of them didn't have their own identity and they took other people's identity. So that may be like what really happened.
Right.
It just wasn't your actual family that did it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I knew she was full of shit because I knew where my family came from. See, she thought I was saying that my Townsends came from Oyster Bay. No, my Townsends came from upstate New York. And when I actually showed her where they were really from, she said, "Oh, I've never seen that before." I know you haven't. But see, I wanted to see how much she was gonna bullshit me. You know what I'm saying? See, I don't mind going to these museums, looking them dead in their face, and asking, "Hey, what do you know about this family?" I didn't tell her everything that I knew right there and then because I felt that she was going to do that. I knew she was going to put me to a slave narrative because there is a slave story, right? You guys can look up Robert Townsend and look up Elizabeth. Elizabeth was a slave. She was a black woman, as we know today, and she was actually a spy for George Washington, as was Robert Townsend. He was a spy too. So, what was it about Robert Townsend and Elizabeth that they would have such a close relationship? And he's a married man. Let's keep that very clear. And Elizabeth was so much of a spy, she got caught in the South amongst the Confederates trying to get intel. They had to actually go down there and get her before she was actually going to be killed. So that's a very interesting story. I encourage everybody to learn about Elizabeth and that story. But just kind of getting back to the topic, that's how I felt in my moment of the museum, where you're in the story, but you're not in the story, and you can't be in the story because if you're in the story, you have to be this in that story. So with the American Negro, I do feel that there are a lot of people who want to tell our story and put us in almost in fourth person as like almost non-existing, right? You don't have a say to correct somebody and say, well, that's not my story, or that's not how that went down, or that's not the way how you should tell that part of the history, right? So it's almost as if you really don't have a say. So you internalize that anger, and it boils into what we now see with Killmonger. Go ahead, Connor. I see your hand raised.
Oh no, I was just gonna bring up real quick about what you talked about. It just came to me one night. Now that's certain ability, what I know as claircognition. You know what I'm saying? I do it all the time. I won't say every day, but most days it'll just come to me. Certain ideas and certain things start to come, as well as certain research, certain books I'll get led to. So I just wanted to add that real quick of what you were talking about from the start for speaking. Yeah, check that out though. Claircognition. Just check that out.
Oh yeah, I was definitely getting some downloads at that time period. I don't even know how, because right now I'm in full mommy mode, but I have no idea. I was getting so many downloads back to back around that time period, and it was just flowing. But so that was that part of the thread where I showed that video So after that video, though, I'm gonna go ahead and read what's next. So I kind of go into the Vikings now. It says, let me put this to the top. All right, it's at the top of the room. Long year wars against the Vikings who invaded Northern America. The American Indians constantly trying to protect their land from the east, turning America into an incorporated technological paradise. And read the comic below. So if you actually read the screenshots, you'll see a picture of the Mohawks. As you see, they're brown. So whoever painted this picture didn't lie. Okay, you see the Mohawks are brown, and they're fighting the Vikings at the border. Now, why is that important? Because we have to look at how did the Vikings get to North America, right? It's no different than how people island hop in the Caribbean. You're island hopping in the Arctic region from Greenland to Iceland and just coming all the way down to Canada. You can cruise that coastal line until you get down to Massachusetts, Maine, and a lot of those little islands that they hit, those would be some of the soft spots. But if you come through Canada, where you would meet the Mohawks, right? And you got to remember, modern day Mohawks sit on the border of Canada and New York, right? So they're right on the border. And actually, we had another bill the other night. I know a few of you guys probably you didn't hear the bill that we had. We were talking about how the Iroquois Nation, which was the Iroquois Confederation, which deals with the 5 tribes of that particular confederation, which is interesting. It will eventually become 6 once the Tuscaroras is going to lose their war. They're going to move up to the north. But what was very interesting about them is that they all consider themselves gatekeepers. So they are supposed to protect different regions of the northern border, right? And the Mohawks, they definitely have their role to protect their particular region. And hence why you'll see them always clashing with the Vikings. Now, how do we know that there's a connection between Vikings and Mohawks? Well, as with a lot of the Iroquois nations, they lived in what we call longhouses. Now, there's been evidence of finding the Vikings living in longhouses all the way in Iceland, all the way in some of the Nordic regions over there. They found remnants of them also living in the same exact style of longhouses, right? So that was another way how they early on, I remember they were drawing that connection, but they just didn't have the DNA yet. But now I guess they do have, some type of DNA, because they actually found a so-called Native American woman. Her bones, her remains was actually found over there, and I think it's Iceland they found her. And they said that she had to have traveled with the Vikings in some sort of fashion, right? So in this thread, you'll see that there is going to be a war that does take place between the American Indians, always constantly trying to protect their borders from invaders. If it's not the Asian, if it's not the European, if it's not the African, if it's not the Vikings, it's always someone else that's trying to invade the border. In this particular sense, it's the Vikings, right? So I'm going to read a little bit of the comic because it might be a little blurry, but if you zoom in, you'll see Killmonger, and you see all the people standing behind him. They're all brown people, right? You see them? And let's just read it. It says, Killmonger cares. Now, this is what Killmonger is saying to, it looks like the Black Panther. He says, Killmonger cares. You may not like my swagger, but at least I help my people. And then Black Panther responds, you exploit people. There's a difference. And then here goes Killmonger. He responds with, so tell me, T'Challa, surrender right now. I can't really read this, but it says, if I surrender right now, will you promise to turn, let's see, does it say Wakanda? I can't really read that. If y'all can read that, let me know. It says, will you promise to turn blank into a technological paradise? Share the riches of Wakanda with your neighbors. Con, I'm at